It is a real pleasure and honor to be here. And I have to say, this is just a shot here. This is Ohio City. It's 5 interconnected farms right outside the city of Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I grew up, my old hometown. Had to be careful last night. I got a chance to meet Franco Harris, and we got chatting a little bit. And when I mentioned I was from Cleveland and that I was a Cleveland Brown fan, I hesitated to talk about Jim Brown. But anyway, we'll go from there. But designing sustainable urban communities is something that's been a commitment for me for quite a while. Actually, it's gone on 40 years now. I want to talk about the anthropocene. I don't know if that's a term that people have heard about, but it's actually a topic that's being debated among scientists today, is whether or not we've entered a new geologic epoch, a new geologic era. And the Anthropocene is actually one that says that for the first time now humans, the impact of our activities, human activities, have global manifestations, global implications. As a matter of fact, we are shaping the very systems that maintain the conditions necessary for life, for better or for worse. And I think many of us would assume, or would come to the conclusion that unfortunately it's been for the worse. Now, we're not going to dwell on problems, I know, but I definitely need to make sure that we understand the context. And so what that does suggest, among other things, is, as this guy mentioned, we do need a different way of thinking. Now, this was in some of the preparatory materials that were sent out ahead of time, and I know it's something that P4 sort of certainly believes in, at least the organizers of P4, that we have to change our way of thinking. Now, this comes from a guy who did thought experiments and really redefine the structure of the universe. So I think we want to take him seriously when he says that we probably do need different ways of thinking about the problems that are facing us. And we can't use the same thought processes that got us into the situations that we're in. I don't know if you know who how many people here know Buckminster Fuller? Oh, that's great. That's great. So, and because Bucky was the person that probably influenced me more than anyone else, and I probably wouldn't be standing on the stage and doing what I'm doing had I not encountered him when I had a personal dilemma as a freshman student at Tufts University. And because I grew up on the banks of Lake Erie and the Cuyahoga River, I became an environmentalist early in life. But I was challenged by my African-American colleagues when I arrived at Tufts, wanting to know why I was committing my time and efforts to the environmental movement, which they thought was not just, and this hurt a lot, irrelevant to the cause of the civil rights movement and all those going on, but as they said to me, maybe even counterproductive, even sinister. And I said, I don't understand. They said, well, listen to the slogans, Greg. Listen to what they're talking about. Limited growth, no growth. How do we factor into that equation? Where's there room for economic equality in a scenario that talks about limited or no growth? It sounds, they said to me, as if it's a ploy to maintain the status quo. The haves will continue to have, and the have-nots will continue to struggle. Now, I will say at that time, I did not have an intellectual response to that challenge, but intuitively, I felt that the twin goals of environmental quality and economic equality had to be compatible. But I didn't quite know at that time until I sort of encountered Buckminster Fuller, who talked about the concepts of synergy, doing more with less, and really comprehensive anticipatory design science. He also knew that in this, if we're going to solve the problems, and if we're going to talk about different ways of thinking about the world, cities are going to have to be a key to the way that we change, what we change our thinking about. And the question I guess we have to ask is, do we think that cities are part of the problem? Are they reactionary victims? Or can we be part of the solution? Someone mentioned earlier issues of density. And we are going to have to deal with density. Unplanned density leads to chaos, as we can see here. This is Kowloon and Hong Kong. It was an actual city that was unplanned, certainly. But we have to start thinking about not only changing the way of thinking, but changing our systems, and changing the very systems that contribute to meeting the everyday needs of our lives. And that's our food, energy, and shelter. I work at a place called the Schumacher Center for New Economics. E.F. Schumacher, many years ago, wrote a book called Small is Beautiful: Economics as if People Mattered. And I think there are some folks now that aren't quite sure that our economic system really factors in people. There's a bottom line, and every once in a while we'll hear about the double bottom line, but can we really develop an economics where people are really a part of it, and when we can talk about the social aspects of our economic development? The Schumacher Society has been involved in housing, land conservation, farm infrastructure, and it's been sort of had a rural focus for many years. I've just come on in January, and my role there is going to be to take the lessons learned from the Schumacher Society and now to start to apply them to urban communities. One of the things, and you know what, we've got to think creatively. We've got to think outside the box, and we have to be willing to be bold and even naive enough to say we can redesign some of the basic systems that we operate under. This little graphic down here, this is local currency. The Schumacher Society has created a currency called Berkshires based on the thinking and writing of people like Jane Jacobs, who says we need to understand that currency is really important, but it should be a way of communicating the health of a community. $9 gets you 10 Berkshires, and we've got about 100 businesses, over 100 businesses in the region that will accept these. Now, why do we do this? We do this primarily because if you walk around, you've got a bunch of Berkshires in your pocket, and you decide you're going to go, you need something, goods or services. If you reach in your pocket, the first thing you're going to do is say, can I get it locally? Can I obtain them locally? We now have, again, over 100, not only 120 businesses, but we also have banks involved in this. So it's a concept, it's not a gimmick, it's a real tool to help us generate and promote local economic development. Lessons that we get, we have lessons, we have our friends, again here from other countries that are giving us and telling us about some real important information and examples of what we can do. Spain, with its cooperatives, has Mondragon. You probably know about the Mondragon cooperative in the Basque region of Spain. Cleveland has taken a lead. I have to give another plug for my hometown here, and they've created the Evergreen Cooperative. And the idea here is small is beautiful, but every once in a while you also need some big companies. And if those big companies, let's say in this case Cleveland Clinic, is providing really important services to the community, and they employ a lot of people. But they're also buying lots of goods and services. And where are they buying those goods and services? Are they purchasing them locally? Could they be purchased locally? This is another lesson from Jane Jacobs. Import substitution, import replacement. Look at what you need in your community. Look at where it comes from. And is it possible that you could purchase those locally? And if so, could the local community, people, we're talking about people, can local people benefit from that type of activity? And what we found is forming cooperatives is a way for that to begin to happen, where you create this structure that allows you now to work with some of your anchor businesses that support your small businesses as you grow your economy. And that's an important lesson. So we want to do that. Producing energy and goods. I'm not going to get too much into the energy because it's already been talked about, but I'm going to get into our urban agriculture, but it's a multi-layered urban agriculture. It starts at the ground, it goes to shrubs, it also includes orchards, permaculture, right? We need to talk about all the things we can do, and also then realize that planting them strategically, integrating them into our planning increases the environment, the microclimate, so there are many benefits to be derived from doing this in the right way. The sky is not the limit. What we've got to do is, again, we've got one energy income source that this planet has depended upon for 4 billion years, and it's the sun. So if we can take advantage of that and realize that we can start to understand how do we meet our basic needs. There are other things we can, job creation can address a number of things, but if we can meet our very basic needs, food, energy, and shelter, and do that locally, it becomes a very empowering process. I learned about this firsthand in my experience at a place called the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative in Boston. Dudley Street is a multicultural neighborhood of African Americans, Latino, Cape Verdeans, and white. One thing we had in common, poor. Located right in the heart, right in the center of Boston, and in the mid-'70s, early '80s, devastated. Began with white flight, but then disinvestment, redlining, even racism, slumlording came to really unravel and destroy this neighborhood, to the point where, in order to minimize losses, slumlords torched their buildings to collect their insurance, and to a point where this neighborhood was reduced to ashes. 1,400 abandoned, vacant lots in the very heart of the city of Boston. But they rebuilt. And it's really amazing. They rebuilt because the community came up with a plan, the community got together to do it, and this is the people power. This is, the collective wisdom and knowledge of the community. They put together a structure. 30-member board of directors, every ethnic group represented, the churches represented, the community development corporations involved, and the city. The city gave us their support to the point where this organization became the first nonprofit, community-based organization to be given the power of eminent domain over all abandoned vacant land in its area. and there was a thought, what are they going to do with this? Can they possibly use this? They took that power and they redeveloped their homes and created a vibrant urban village that had as its heart, you thought, when is he going to get to food? Food at its heart, food production. So we dared to be naive. One of the first things that the community did and said, we're going to build houses, we want to build jobs, but we're also going to take care of some of our negatives. The Brook Avenue garage was an eyesore. It was a brownfield right in the heart of the community. You can see there, it was oil. We got money from the Mass Highway Department. The Mass Highway Department with money to clean up polluted areas. We took that garage and tore it down. And in its place, we created this greenhouse right in the center, 10,000 square foot greenhouse that became the anchor for our urban agriculture program, built, by the way, on a community land trust. Community land trust, so that the community land trust binds people together. We have something in common. Yes, you can own your own home, and believe me, there were lots of discussions and lots of concerns about, why don't I own the land? I need to own the land. We said, well, the community owns the land, but you own your building or your house, but that becomes sort of a cohesive force in bringing people together. And so people bought into it, and we rebuilt brand new homes. And the urban agriculture, as I said, becomes sort of a mainstay and an anchor in this process. Now, we also learned some things from other countries. I mentioned Spain. We've got, again, the Netherlands, Denmark. We're learning some very valuable lessons from Cuba. I was in Cuba for 6 days on sustainable food systems tour. And the reason we were interested in Cuba is because they went through a period, obviously, after the collapse of the Soviet bloc in the late 1980s, where they had no access to chemical fertilizers, pesticides, or any resources to purchase them. So they had a choice, either starve or find a way to grow your food without chemical fertilizers or pesticides. And that's important to us because we live in a community that had been polluted, contaminated with brownfields. And the last thing we want to do as we build up our agriculture program is to reintroduce into our community harmful products. And so we looked at this and said, this is a really powerful lesson we can learn. And now we're setting up a network, a Cuban-U.S. agroecology network that's going to link small farmers in Cuba with small farmers in the U.S., and especially urban farmers, to talk about how we can work together. We can take some traditional values, traditional farming values, add innovation, and figure out how to do some things and grow food in sustainable ways that haven't been done before. These are again, you can look at the freight containers, right? The ship freight containers. They've now been purchased and they've been fitted with LED lighting and hydroponic systems, and they're producing 6 plantings of greens a year. And by the way, these are freight containers that they get at a bargain because they don't have to have the refrigeration units working. As a matter of fact, you don't need a refrigeration unit. What you want is just the opposite. You want these things to be warm. So, and they could be sited on vacant lots or in places they need a source of electricity, but they can go a great ways to sort of now taking advantage of underutilized or spaces so we can grow food. It don't have to be green. Also, we have the rooftop gardens and rooftop farms that are also part of the scheme. Really quickly, City of Boston took a really bold step, zoned the entire city to allow commercial farming within city limits. If you don't have zoning, it's not allowed. And so you know what? Not only do we want backyard gardens and community gardens, but we would like to have commercial farms where folks can kind of address those issues of the food desert. So that's been happening. Public market that will only source locally grown food. This is going to be, again, a new building with your public markets, and we have one in Pittsburgh and there are others, but this one will focus on locally sourced foods. And let me just say finally, can we talk about a cluster, economic development that has food as its focal point, but then gets into value added, gets into processing, gets into some other things that celebrate the traditions and the culture of the neighborhood, but come up with jams, jellies, sulfite, any type of value added products that can lead to some really interesting economic development opportunities based, once again, on food. And then finally, we're going to take it to the streets. And someone mentioned food trucks, but food trucks can do a number of different things. We've got some food trucks that actually are mobile markets that go to low-income communities and deliver where they don't have access to it. We've got some that are, again, set up in the city, some that deliver to elite restaurants, and some that are actually walk-in diners. So I'm going to end by saying what we need is a revolution, a design science revolution that says, let's take what we know about the world, how it works, how nature works, the principles that we've gained from there, and apply them to human life support. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take that.
You got that?
Riveting. Greg, we know we have a lot of need for urban agriculture, and we know of the socio and ecological benefit of it. How do we create more incentives for the investment of time, energy, and resources into, really this urban agricultural and green space?
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the things and one of the biggest obstacles to getting one of these programs started is access to land. And so one of the things that we've been, at least when I was Commissioner of Agriculture, we tried to work with local communities, tried to work with the city. We tried to say, can we do an inventory and find ways that we can make certain lands available to urban farmers, well, obviously with some stipulations in terms of what we get in return. And we've also, I should also mention, maybe a pilot programs. We created a couple of grants programs that allowed folks to try it out and to try to figure out some of the lessons that they could, learn by doing some of these pilot projects and then transfer them to other farmers as well.
Very good. Pittsburgh, compared to other similar-sized cities, have a large concentration of food deserts. And so why do you think that is? Is it a lack of transportation, walkability? What do you think?
Or just investment. I mean, again, when supermarkets have to make a decision, and again, this gets back to there's a single bottom line. And again, this is not a criticism, but when you decide you're going to site a supermarket, it's got to meet certain criteria in terms of volume, in terms of whatever. And so sometimes those siting issues don't coincide with what the needs of what the individual or communities or the residents need. So there are economic decisions based on the old model of economics. That's why I'm saying I think we need to rethink what we mean by economics and what can we do to, again, you use the term incentivize even some of those, in the case could be supermarkets, could be small markets to move into those communities. But if we can't do it there, then we got to look at and see what some of the gaps can be plugged by urban agriculture.
Very good. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you.